When you first hear your music start, you get nervous when you're about to go in front of a crowd?
When I'm singing or for wrestling?
Wrestling.
Wrestling. I don't get nervous as much as I get anxious. I feel like they're two very different emotions. I used to get nervous. I felt like when I was much younger and less seasoned or hadn't seen as much or been, I used to get nervous, and I think that if I was to get nervous, it would almost make me uncomfortable. But I still get anxious because I love the business and I love performing, and I want to go out there and deliver and over-deliver, not just for the fans, but for my opponent and for the company and for all these things. So I still get excited, I still get anxious, and I demand a lot from myself and from my opponent and from all the things, from the cameraman. Like, I demand a lot from everybody because I just want to put on the best that we can put on together collectively. And so I think that if there's ever a moment that you don't feel that way, then you should probably stop doing it because you stop loving it.
Got one more question here.
Okay.
Our second one. Have you met Roman Reigns and the Young Bucks?
Have I met them?
Yeah.
Yes, I met the Young Bucks when they were literally young bucks and not old bucks. I met them, I'm just kidding. I love them. No, I met them when they were in TNA, Impact at the time, when they were there, when I first came from WWE. That was probably, I had heard about them and seen their work, obviously, because I kind of pay attention, or I try to. So I met them and I worked with them at Impact Wrestling. Who was the other person you asked?
It was about
very huge fan of one Roman Reigns, or Joe, as I like to call him, because we're friends. Yeah, he's a nice guy, like a very, very nice guy.
All right, cool. Do we have more questions out here? Anybody up here? Up here, we got another one up front. If you think of yours, come back. I'll come back to you. I'll come. All right, here we go.
This one's for Mickey. What countries inspired you to sing country?
What inspired me to do country music? I think I grew up on all kinds of music. I love music, pretty much every genre, for different reasons. But I felt like when I was writing, or when I would write, I was writing more in a, I would say more in a storyteller sort of place, and it fell mostly in the country music genre. And now when I look at it, I go like, I don't know if it's as much country as it is Southern rock, because everything's kind of ever changing, right? Like, what is country music anymore? I don't really know. I don't know what a lot of music, like it's all kind of blurred at this point, but I grew up with country music, and I felt like storytelling, songwriting was my strength because it was a way to kind of get my emotions and my thoughts and stories out in kind of lyrical form. But yeah, but I love every kind of music. Like, I work out to rap. Like, I listen to a lot of rap when I work out. I listen to a lot of, I grew up on everything from Prince is one of my all-time favorite, to Madonna that was on my mom's side, but my dad's side, we listened to a lot of like Otis Redding and Al Green and James Brown, and then my stepdad was where I found country music. That was outlaw country, it was Willie, it was Waylon, it was all those kind of things, and then I competed a lot with horses, with equines, and in dressage, they use a lot of, the symphony or the orchestra music, and I played violin for 5 years, so I had to learn a lot of that just in school. So I feel like I'm moved by all kinds of music, but country is what I lean to when I write.
All right, cool. And we got another question back here now.
All right. I've been watching wrestling since I was 10 years old. I'm 45 years old now. My question is, who inspired you to be a wrestler from all those years, from your beginning to now?
Okay, so I fell in love with wrestling because of my father. My parents separated when I was 2.5 years old. And so our weekends, or every other weekend, would be spent with my sister and my other sister, who we would see every other weekend, with my father. And this is our bond. Like, this was the thing that we would watch together. Besides going to church, we would watch wrestling. And that was when I first remember wrestling. And we grew up with like Georgia Championship Wrestling, NWA, because at the time it was still a lot of territories and stuff like that. That was when I first fell in love with wrestling, and I think that through everything, like I competed with horses, we did a lot of equine stuff, and so I kind of fell off the wrestling bandwagon, I want to say somewhere around 12, until I was about 17, and then came the Attitude Era. And the Attitude Era reminded me of wrestling's freaking cool. Like, this was when wrestling was cool. Like, it was really cool. Like, you could beat up your boss, you could say curse words, there was all kinds of things happening. It was not the PG-13 era. It was, wrestling was cool. There was like people, drinking beer in the front row. There was hot chicks, there was college people, there was a mix, there was families, there was everything, right? And I fell back in love with wrestling, like hardcore fandom. And I kind of was out of high school, and I grew up in Montpelier, Virginia. I tried for an honors diploma. I failed trigonometry, so I didn't get it. And I was kind of like in this stuck place of like, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to go to the Army Reserves? What am I going to do, right? Because I was about to get kicked out the nest hard. And I was working in a bar, and my buddy, who was one of the bouncers at the bar, had suggested, because he would see me like avidly watching wrestling every Monday, every Thursday, and you could not take me away from it. So he's the one who suggested, he's like, my buddy has a wrestling school, and it's outside of DC, and mind you, DC is probably 2 hours from my house, in my first apartment. And I remember that was in November 1998. I was like, your buddy has a school? What's a wrestling school? What? I thought that they found these people like they found circus animals. And, the first person who, I will say my two icons, who I consider the GOATs, the greatest of all time, is forever Sensational Sherry, Scary Sherry. She was the first woman who was all woman. She would go in there and tear it up with the boys. She wasn't scared of anyone. She wasn't scared to be herself. And Macho Man Randy Savage. And both these characters were over the top. That's the wrestling I fell in love with. It was these over the top, larger than life characters that were so edgy and different, and nobody was like them. And I think that's why when I was like, wait, there's a wrestling school? I thought they found these people like circus animals and stuff. But yeah, that was November 98. I drove up to the school, and it was in the back of a martial arts academy. It was a taekwondo and boxing gym. They were combined, clearly. And that's where I learned to first take my first bumps. It was the hardest ring. It was like hitting this table. And I wrestled there and started there, and I probably practiced and learned there for about a year before I transferred schools. So that was it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer, because at that time period, it was like The Rock, Stone Cold, all this crazy period of all that time was happening, and that's what really inspired me to get into wrestling. I loved it.
Yeah.
That's about the same time you're talking about. Females, males, everybody.
Yeah.
That's what gave me the love and passion for wrestling. I asked you that question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So you competed in Ohio Valley Wrestling. Do you have any good stories from that era, specifically maybe that have to do with like Jim Cornette?
Oh, wow. I know Jim Cornette is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I owe that man a lot in my career. Because he saw something in a little Alexis Lurie and the Babyface Fire, and he gave me the freedom and the reins to kind of explore that. I have so many stories, I always felt like, and it's different now, because NXT, I don't consider that a developmental territory, not like the developmental territory that we went through. Like, we all up and moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and we were tucked away in this Ohio Valley kind of pocket. And it was purposely set up that way, so that way you were only seen on TV, but only locally in that like Kentucky-Anna pocket, right? It was so that you were hidden away from television on the big stream, so that way you were over-prepared by the time you got there, but also by the time you debuted, you could debut as this character and the people would believe it because they hadn't seen you get beat by everybody in the developmental system or beat everyone in the developmental system for a year leading up to it, right? So it was like a real developmental system, and it wasn't a state-of-the-art Olympic facility where you literally have trainers and nutritionists and people to ice you and heat you and wrap you at your fingertips. It was literally Danny Davis, Rip Rogers, and Jim Cornette about to pull their hair out and wanting to try to kill you at least once a week. It was traveling to Elizabethtown and setting up a ring in the middle of a, gymnasium to put on a show, and the girls and the boys set up the ring and broke the ring down, and not just the boys. It was like old school, and it was still a bit of that old school kind of teaching and thoughts. And I always say, it's like, we want so badly when you're in those moments of like, what's next, I can't wait to debut, I can't wait to make it to big time. And the amount of moments that I go back to in time, and I go like, those were some of the greatest moments of my life, because these were my brothers and my sisters, and we were all struggling together, and we were all trying to get to the same place. And some of us did, and some of us didn't. But we grew. It was my first time away from home, away from my family, to up and move to Louisville, like from Richmond. Like, that was a big step for me. And at that point, I'd been wrestling 5 years, so I'd traveled, I'd done Jersey. I was a weekend warrior, so, but to up and move my whole life there and to have to like go through all these experiences with my brothers and my sisters who were all doing it together, it was magical. And it was magic because we genuinely supported our friends when they made it and when they succeeded, because if they could succeed, then I could succeed, and vice versa. So I learned the most. I always say that I could work when I went there, but the fine-tuning that happened, and Rip Rogers would throw around that term all the time, like, you're gonna be over-prepared, but I was so over-prepared that I was ready for anything by the time I made it. So it was probably the most amazing experiences of my life as well.
Very cool. So that leads me to a kind of a question that I've got. So going back to 2018, the very first ever Women's Royal Rumble, you come down as number 26, right? And then Trish Stratus comes out at number 30. She kind of clears house a little bit, and then you and Trish Stratus face off. What was that pop like? What did that feel like?
It was incredible. It was incredible, and it was incredible for a number of reasons, because that moment wasn't supposed to happen originally, and we both had to fight incredibly hard to make that moment happen. And it was kind of heartbreaking for me that we even had to fight for this moment, because I go like, I don't think you understand what this story did for a lot of people. It's a lot of the reasons why. It's the reason Sasha is here. It's the reason Bailey is here. It's the reason Becky is here, is because of this storyline. Like, if there wasn't this storyline, half these girls in the locker room wouldn't be here. And I'm just trying to make them understand this. And I was just very fortunate, or it was thankful, I should say, because it took a lot to get there, that we finally were able to talk them into letting us allow this moment to happen. But when the reaction happened, and when the people reacted the way they did, that was where gratitude came in, because it justified my argument of what I'd worked all weekend to stake my claim and put up a fit about. And they came to me later, and even the agent came down. I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you, and you know, it was a good call on doing that spot. And I was like, yeah, I know it was. My only concern is why you didn't believe me, because I already knew that it was going to do this, because I know what we've done. Like, you need to start looking at the women the same way you look at the men, because if it was a male doing that same thing and it came to you, it wouldn't have even been a question. But it's different for girls, you know, and that perception is changing, and it's pretty awesome to see. But it's steps like that and it's moments like that that have allowed this change to happen. And yeah, I'm just grateful that people erupted like they did, because that could have went the other way for me, and I would have been eating a lot of egg on my face.
Yeah, absolutely. I just actually rewatched that moment earlier today, kind of going back through in my head and kind of just taking in that moment, listening to that crowd. I'm sure that was just like a magical experience, basically.
It was one of the loudest moments of the night. Like, and it's weird to say that, because it's just, I didn't expect the people to do that. I knew that they would react and that people would remember, and I was like, Trish and I haven't been in the same ring together in a decade. Like, they're gonna love this moment. Even if we just tease it, take it away from them, we gotta tease it. And yeah, I'm just thankful they did, because it justified my argument.
Fantastic. That's nice hearing too that the agent came back to you later to say that you had something right there. Seems like we've had some new people walk in. Any new questions from the crowd? Yes, one more back up front over here. All right.
There you go.
I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but Mickey, what's your favorite song that you sing?
The favorite song that I use? Hardcore Country. It is my favorite song because I wrote that song. Yeah. I mean, the Obsession song is okay, but it's literally Hey Mickey, sort of, kind of, but with a spin on it, you know? And I tried to get my music changed. There was this whole thing where, you know, where they would get artists to come in and do, like, Maria got new music, and all these people got new music, and I'm like, I want new music. And even when I first left, because they knew I was working on music, but it didn't fit. You know, obviously country music didn't fit that character that they were trying, you know, for me. So it just didn't work out, but yeah. I almost, in the second run, ironically, we talk about music, I almost changed my music to Grown Ass Woman, which was my latest single I just put out. Because I thought, oh, it's a new song and people will be excited about it. And I had to go, I talked to Nick about it, my husband, but we went back and forth, and I was like, you know what? I think we just need to bring back hardcore country, because it's so symbolic, and I think it resonates with a lot of people, but it's also the entirety of my career at Impact, so I think that's the one. I think we just need to go back to that, so we went back. What's old is new.
Very cool, very cool. Any other questions out here from the crowd? All right, so you got a couple right here. All right, let's do this.
Going back to your original run with Trish Stratus when you first went into WWE, I understand a lot of work goes into story, character development, also the in-ring work, and also the look of the characters as well. And your particular run with Trish had you in a very unconventional wrestling outfit. Did that particular outfit have any challenges with your in-ring work at all? Or
You mean with the skirts and stuff? Yes, it was easy. Like, okay, so it was probably the cheapest gear I've ever had, because it was literally like what was cute in pop culture at the moment. It was those little skirts. There was a lot of wardrobe malfunctions more with my shorts, what was underneath the skirt, and not for a lack of wearing clothes, because I would have on like 5 pair of boy shorts, but they all turned into 1 pair by the end of the match. So there was a bit of a struggle with that kind of thing. I felt like everybody was wearing wrestling gear, and for this character, like, it made sense for that character. It made sense for that character because she was a super fan who had gotten a chance in wrestling. And yes, she had trained to be a wrestler, but at the end of the day, she was still a fan, and she was a super fan. And so she wouldn't necessarily have wrestling gear, made unless it was Trish Stratus's wrestling gear or something that was like hers. And now everybody has gear. For me, it's always been about character. I feel like anybody can be a good wrestler, but not everybody can put butts in seats. Like even the best wrestlers in the world can't put butts in seats. They can't make you care about them as a human or care about their stories. And they could put on a 5-star match, but you won't remember it tomorrow because you didn't feel anything about it. So the art of wrestling is somewhere between acting and athletics, and the actual in-ring performance of it is only half of it, but it's what you do in the storytelling to get to that. And so she was just the perfect character because I think she bridged that gap, and I had seen enough of that and being in wrestling for so long. And just seeing fandom as a whole, and I think we've all experienced it from the super fans of rock and roll stars and stuff, and they scream and they pass out and they show up at the hotel at 3 a.m. and are just waiting in the lobby and all these things, which I never did. Even as a massive fan, I never did. But I think that it was just easy to kind of embrace that and just try to turn her on and be her, and that was like really the magic of why the story worked, you know? Is because it was so different, and I didn't show up in wrestling gear trying to play wrestler. I was this super fan who was in love with Trish Stratus, and she was my idol, and I wanted to be like her. And it was like, how do you do that? But still, the difference was I was actually a really good wrestler because I trained my whole life for it. So, yeah, over-prepared. That's the word.
So even though there's wrestling is storytelling, there's still the athletic aspect of it, and a lot of times there's injuries. What's the worst injury you sustained in a match? Were you able to finish the match, and how long were you out?
Okay, so I would say the worst injury I ever got in the ring was I had a stinger. I thought I broke my neck, and I didn't. I had extreme whiplash. I had to turn like this for 3 weeks. It was with Melina. We were in a match, and I was going to give her her Karana. Some people may remember this, or they don't. So I was going to give her her Karana, which is I jump up, I jump on her shoulders, and I flip her in the middle of the ring. Do you know what that is? Yeah, he's aware. Okay. And for whatever reason, I mean, it was like this was right towards the end of the match. For whatever reason, she slipped. So when I went to jump up, she slipped and crumbled underneath of me, and I lawn darted. Like I landed on my head and lawn darted myself. And I was legit, if you go back and watch that, I was legit I had no idea what was happening. And I knew that we had to go, whatever we were going to do, we didn't do. We just went and finished the match there because I thought I broke my neck, and I did not, thank you. But I could not turn my head for almost 3 weeks there. And a lot of people go like, oh well, I tore my ACL and I just came back from that. That was probably the most extensive like rehab and real like testament to, oh, this is an injury. Because prior to that, I'd never been out, and this is 20 some years, I'd never been out with a surgery on an injury. I've separated both shoulders. I've separated this one twice. I've separated and broken this one. I've jammed my neck up. I've, broken fingers and toes, but my ACL was the big test of like, you have to get surgery and you also have to do all this rehab to get back. And so that was probably the most testing on my spirit, I think, but the scariest was definitely that fall.
All right, that's a good question, Chris. Injuries in the ring are always scary and something everyone wants to avoid for sure. We've got a question out here now, I believe.
Hi, so you mentioned that you stepped in the ring with many legends in the past. Presently speaking, who is someone that you're eager to get in the ring with that you haven't faced? Any company?
Anyone that I haven't had a chance to wrestle yet, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, anyone that you haven't faced.
I would say, I mean, it depends on which promotion you're looking at. I think that there's someone from every promotion. I mean, with AEW, I thank Serena Deeb all day long. I love her, but I've obviously faced her before, but I think that there's no secret, a lot of people don't know this, that Deeb was in OVW when I was there, and I took her underneath my wing there. I've loved her and thought she was incredible from day one. So I just love and respect her so much. As far as Impact, there's a lot of people, it's a whole new crop of women. I think I would really like to do some stuff with Taylor Wilde, because when I first came to Impact, she had gone back home, and then she has recently made a comeback, but she hasn't, for whatever reason, since I've been back, she's not been there. And I just think she's one of those people that started in the original OG Knockouts, kind of her and Gail, and Gail, Kong, that whole crop that I haven't really had a chance to work with. I've never wrestled her. And as far as WWE locker room, the only female that I've never locked up with is Charlotte. And so we were there for however long, and for whatever reason, the only time that we even were across the ring at each other was that last Rumble, which is insane to me, because we were in the same locker rooms for so long, but it just never happened, so.
Yeah, that's kind of wild that you guys never faced off, but
Right.
maybe somewhere down the line.
We're saving it for Mania.
Yeah, absolutely. I think go ahead, man, go ahead. Well, actually, I was going to say, that kind of leads into a question. Hang on just a second, man. So, speaking of the Rumble, 2 weeks from tonight, you are in the Rumble as the Knockout Women's Champion. So, how is that with the inter-promotional, like, cross, WWE and Impact working together? How does that feel to be, like, the first person there, really, to be part of that?
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? I think. First off, for the first time in history, in WWE history, they have actually mentioned a championship that they didn't own or own the rights to, ever, male or female. That is groundbreaking in itself, and I know that there's been a lot of doors and windows and all these things that have happened among promotions, but it's not one that they've ever even entertained, ever. And so I think to be the person that they've decided to do that with is extremely humbling, especially when you think about the last thing that most people remember me from. And it was really a blessing, I think, for me, because I felt like I had an incredible career there. I worked with some inspirational women, some of the best women of all time, and it wasn't fair that was the thing that people remembered. It wasn't fair. I did too much, and I worked too hard for too long for that to be the thing that people remembered. So now this can be the thing that people remembered, and I deserve that. And I think that it's really cool for them to recognize that and show me the respect back that they should have. You know what I mean? Like it's like this weird thing of like their way of giving me the respect back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, and that'll be
Makes
exciting.
me want to
see.
cry. I want to cry about it.
Well, we'll see how that goes in 2 weeks. Maybe you'll get
I'm gonna win.
Charlotte, right?
I'm not showing up to lose, baby.
Absolutely. I think we got another question over here. It is a great attitude. All right.
Okay. Before you get into the ring, what do you do before it's your turn to wrestle?
Before I walk out the curtain or before I step in the ring?
Like before you get out the curtain.
I pray.
Yeah, like to prep.
I pray every day. I do. I pray for, and if that's offensive to some people, I'm so sorry, but I'm not sorry. I pray to whatever you want to call. I pray to my God that I not only can go out there, that I protect my opponent, I protect myself, that we go out there and steal the show, and that we level up the business and level up the game, and that we hopefully to show that we earn this spot, and that we both come back safe and sound and can go on to the next town the next day. That's what I pray about. So.
That's a great question, man. We got one more here.
I got a couple of things to say. Don't be ashamed of your religion. God is God, period. Here's another thing that I would like to say is, working with Vince McMahon, I got two questions. Is he a douchebag? And what was your hardest match you ever had?
Oh God, the hardest match I've ever been in?
Well, let's go back to Vince McMahon. Is he a douchebag or not?
I think that's subject to opinion. I will say...
You know, I know it's funny. I'm just saying.
It is funny. I will say he's never been one to me. He's always been respectful to me. It's so weird to say this, but I've gone to his office, I've showed up in his office, I've had conversations with him. Even after the trash gate, he called me on the phone,
right,
and we had a 20-minute conversation, and he was just super apologetic, and so he's always been respectful to me.
Thank you.
The only time he's ever cursed me out was after WrestleMania, and it wasn't a curse. It was more, I was told that I was crass, and how could I do this thing?
Because he knows better.
It was a huge pop.
Right?
It was awesome, and I'm not sorry for it. And I didn't apologize that day, and I still will not apologize today.
Amen to you, woman. Amen to you. What was your most difficult match? That's my last question.
Oh God. I will say, obviously, through this match that we just put together, or we just did this at Hard to Kill with Deanna, was a very difficult match. I still have bruises. I still have tack marks in my back. The cage match with Tara was one of the most difficult matches, and the reason why is because a lot of people don't know this, but she got injured about 5 minutes or so before we were supposed to end the match, and she hyperextended her elbow. When she got, and you can go back and watch it. If you go back and watch it, you can see where her elbow bent like this, but the other way. I think it's close to like that, how that Felix guy did on his arm. It was very similar. It bent like this, but the other way, that way. And she finished the match. And having to figure that out on the fly with an injury and what we could still and couldn't do was pretty terrifying. And obviously there's been other difficult matches, but off the top of my head I would say that one was pretty up there, just because I wanted to make sure that she didn't get hurt anymore, and she was taking care of me, and so I didn't want to destroy her on the way out, you know?
In that vein, what was your favorite match?
Oh man. I always get asked this, and I always say there's nothing like the first. There's nothing like the first time that you win the championship. I think I'd worked an immense amount of time, and I prayed about that moment, and WrestleMania against Trish was the culmination of all my dreams coming true, and a lot of hard work that it took to get there. As far as the match itself being the greatest match I've ever had, no, but the emotions and the chemistry and the story and the reactions, like I said, those are the things that make memories and make history, not the match themselves. And so that will always be my favorite match of all time. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's awesome. I can't imagine winning a first-time championship. That sounds pretty fantastic. It's different from my perspective because I referee, so I count 1, 2, 3, and then I hand the belt always to somebody else. But that's pretty cool. Sounds pretty amazing. I've got a question. Thinking about there's a lot of talk lately about intergender wrestling. Is there a male opponent that you have wrestled that you enjoy wrestling against, or that you haven't that you would like to?
This is something new that's come along, and so I come from a very old school perspective of like, there was a story as to why this intergender match would happen. And it's very rare, like when I look at the realism of a lot of things, it's just really hard, it's a different thing, and I respect it, and I appreciate it, but I just think that we've worked really hard to level up the women to this point where they're taken seriously, that I want to go out there and I want to wrestle them. Like I want to wrestle the women. Like I want to wrestle the women that are going to be the next generation of women who are raising the bar and making history for the little girls of tomorrow to go out there and level up their game. Like I could go out there and wrestle the guys, but I felt like I spent half my career training with the guys because there was no women to wrestle. Now there's actually women to wrestle. Why do I want to wrestle the boys? There's girls now. Can I get in the ring with them? Like, it's exciting. It's very exciting. And I see it as cool. And it's cool because now we can do a lot of stuff that maybe the girls can't base you for or whatever. But Mickie James, who's always wanted to level up women's wrestling, and now that there's an immense crop of talented, amazing women out there that I can actually have some awesome matches with, I want to wrestle them. Yeah. And then I'll kick the guys' butts too. Because that's,
One final question. You're going to be in the Royal Rumble in a couple of weeks. How do you prepare for something like that?
I'm still trying to get over the fact that I'm in it. And I think that you have to prepare for stylistically, there's a lot of surprises that haven't been announced yet. And when I look at the roster of girls that are in it, like including the girls that they have on TV now and the girls that they've announced that they're bringing back, the legends, but also the immense amount of girls, there's like 11 spots. Is there 11 or 12 spots left that they haven't talked about yet? And 11 or 12, so I'm like, who are they gonna put in there? And if it's me, I'm putting a Melina in there. I'm putting, maybe a Jackie Moore in there. I'm putting some people who have been, I'm putting a Jazz in there. I'm putting women who have been champions and that represent the women's championship and the generations of champions that is taken. So then you really don't know because everybody is out there to make a name and everybody wants to win and everybody is hungry because you have one chance at glory and only one of these 30 women can walk out of there as the winner. And we all know that that champion is going to get a shot at WrestleMania. And at the end of the day, if you are in this business and you don't want to headline WrestleMania, then you are in the wrong business, period.
That's good. I just want to say congratulations
Thank you.
on the title. Congratulations on the Royal Rumble.
Do you like this one? It looks like a transformer.
It's pretty amazing.
It looks like a little bit like a transformer.
Yeah. And
Thank
are
you.
you going to be here tomorrow?
I am going to be here tomorrow all day. I just changed my flight to Monday because we in Nashville are going to get a bit of snow and we don't know what to do with that.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Everybody give it up for Mickie James.
Thank you
Come on
guys.
now.